The spark of defiance. In the heart of the galaxy, where ancient stars flickered like distant memories, the Galactic Council had ruled with an iron grip for millennia. Its members, powerful and ancient beings from worlds that had known the rise and fall of empires, convened in a chamber that seemed to stretch into eternity. Tall, curved walls were adorned with shimmering metals and exotic gemstones, relics from civilizations long gone. Floating holographic screens hovered in the air, casting soft, ethereal glows on the faces of the council members as they scrutinized the latest reports from across the galaxy. The chamber, often filled with the buzz of intergalactic politics and the hum of debate, was uncharacteristically quiet. All eyes were fixed on one figure standing in the center. A lone human, Ambassador Lucas Gray, stood resolute, his black uniform contrasting sharply against the lavish alien robes surrounding him. His weathered face, a map of countless experiences, remained stoic. But his eyes, those piercing blue eyes, told a different story, a story of defiance, determination, and a refusal to remain silent. For 3 centuries, humanity had been under the watchful eye of the Galactic Council, its growth carefully monitored, its freedom restricted. Trade routes were denied to Earth, colonies blocked from expanding, and human advancements were consistently undermined by the older, more established races. But humanity had endured. More than that, they had adapted, innovated, and now, it seemed, they had reached a point where the tides could no longer be ignored. Commander Lucas Gray had been chosen to represent Earth in this pivotal moment. His role was not to beg for permission or acceptance. It was to deliver a message that would forever change the course of human history. Esteemed members of the Galactic Council, Gray began, his voice steady and unwavering. For 300 years, humanity has endured your restrictions. We have watched as you blocked our access to vital trade routes, as you closed the doors to our colonies, and as you whispered warnings to the other species of this galaxy about the dangers of doing business with Earth. The Council Elder, a towering alien being with translucent skin that shimmered like liquid silver, leaned forward in his seat. His voice, smooth and composed, cut through the silence. Ambassador Gray, your species is known for its violence. Your history is filled with conflict and destruction. The protocols we established were for your own protection. Gray's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. Violence? Yes, we've had our share of mistakes. Wars, misunderstandings, chaos. But we've learned. We've grown. While your council has maintained the same systems for 10,000 years, repeating the same mistakes, humanity has evolved. And we've learned something you didn't expect. A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. The council members exchanged uneasy glances, their attention shifting from the human ambassador to the holographic display floating beside him. Gray continued, his voice cutting through the tension. We have developed technologies, methods of warfare, and systems of defense that your sensors can't even detect. For decades, we've observed your methods, learned your weaknesses, and adapted. You thought we were children, that we were a species to be kept in check. But now, we're not asking for your permission anymore. We're telling you that things are going to change. He pressed a button on his wrist device, and a star map appeared in the air above the chamber. At first, the map was quiet, showing the familiar positions of the Council's military bases, shipyards, and population centers in neat, color-coded dots. The Council members relaxed, seeing nothing out of the ordinary. But then, Gray made a gesture with his hand, and new dots appeared, hundreds of them, then thousands. Bright yellow points of light scattered across the map, surrounding Council worlds like a web. The Council Elder Prime's voice trembled slightly. Impossible. You cannot be serious. Your ships, your stations, they should not exist. We monitor every movement in Council space. Your systems. Gray interrupted. Your systems track what they're designed to track. But 20 years ago, we discovered something in the ancient Council records, something you never considered. You designed your monitoring systems to be perfect, but you never thought someone might develop something different. something undetectable. The chamber fell into stunned silence. For the first time in centuries, the Council was confronted with the undeniable truth. Humanity had become a force to be reckoned with. Gray's voice, though calm, carried an undeniable weight. "We have not come here to beg for a seat at your table," Gray continued. "We have come to give you a warning. We know your weaknesses, and we know how to exploit them. We've learned when to fight, and more importantly, when not to." He turned, his back to the Council, and made his way toward the exit. But before he left, he turned once more, locking eyes with each Council member in turn. "You have one standard day," Gray said, his tone hard as stone, "to dismantle the discriminatory protocols against Earth and all the other young species. If you refuse, well, I think we all know what happens next." With that, Commander Lucas Gray walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than the weight of the stars themselves. The future of humanity had just begun, and it would not be controlled by the Galactic Council any longer. The hidden power of Earth. As the cold, metallic doors of the Galactic Council's chamber slid shut behind Ambassador Lucas Gray, the tension in the room remained palpable. The Council members, each a representative of ancient and powerful civilizations, sat motionless, their minds racing. For the first time in countless years, they felt the stirrings of something unfamiliar. Fear. It was not a fear of physical harm, for the humans were still relatively small players in galactic terms, but a fear of what they had underestimated. The humans were no longer the meek species they had once believed them to be. Across the galaxy, back on Earth, the weight of Gray's words had reverberated through every corner of the planet. While the Council remained in the dark, humanity had been preparing for a moment like this for decades. What the Council failed to understand was that Earth had never been as powerless as they thought. For years, Commander Gray had worked with Earth's top scientists, engineers, and military strategists to create technologies far beyond the scope of the Council's understanding. The hidden ships, secret colonies, and advanced weaponry that were now scattered across the galaxy were the culmination of human ingenuity and resilience. Earth had learned to hide in plain sight. In a secure facility located deep within the heart of the Rocky Mountains, Commander Janice Miller, one of Earth's most brilliant engineers, reviewed the data Gray had uncovered. For the last 3 years, Janice and her team had been working on a project so secret that only a handful of people knew of its existence. The project's goal was simple yet ambitious: to outsmart the all-seeing sensors of the Galactic Council. And now, after years of effort, they had done it. Janice sat at a desk, the glow of multiple screens reflecting off her glasses as she typed furiously. Her hands, though steady, trembled with anticipation. The system she had helped develop, codenamed Obsidian Veil, was humanity's answer to the Council's advanced surveillance technology. Unlike the sophisticated sensors the Council had used for millennia, Obsidian Veil utilized quantum cloaking and artificial intelligence to manipulate the very fabric of space. It was a technology that allowed human ships and installations to remain undetected, no matter how powerful the Council's monitoring systems were. "We've done it," Janice muttered under her breath, as the final line of code appeared on her screen. She leaned back in her chair and let out a long breath of relief. But there was no time for celebration. The countdown had already begun. In less than 24 hours, the fate of Earth would be sealed. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, the members of the Galactic Council were still grappling with the implications of Gray's message. Elder Prime, who had long considered the humans to be a species that could be easily controlled, stood silently before a holographic map of Council space. His translucent skin shimmered with agitation as he studied the star map. The yellow dots that Gray had shown them were no longer just a theory. They were real. Hundreds of human ships, hidden in the deep spaces between stars, surrounding Council worlds like an invisible net. "How did we miss this?" Elder Prime whispered, his voice tinged with disbelief. A younger member of the Council, a reptilian representative from a distant star system, hissed in frustration. Impossible. How could we have been so blind? Our surveillance networks have been in place for centuries. No one, not even the most advanced civilizations, could have avoided detection. Elder Prime's mind raced. If what Gray said was true, humanity had developed an entirely new form of technology, one that could bypass the most sophisticated surveillance systems in the galaxy. It was a game changer, and the Council knew that if they did not act quickly, their grip on the galaxy would slip away. "Prepare the fleets," Elder Prime ordered, his voice now cold and commanding. "We will not let Earth challenge us. We will make an example of them. If they think they can defy the Council, they are gravely mistaken." The war machines of the Council, vast fleets of ships that had once crushed entire civilizations, began to mobilize. But what they did not know was that humanity had already anticipated this move. Back on Earth, Gray's message had sparked a wave of activity across the globe. The governments of Earth, united under the banner of a single alliance for the first time in history, began preparing for the inevitable conflict. The Obsidian Veil technology had been shared with key military leaders, and soon, human ships began to take flight, cloaked and undetectable, spreading out across the galaxy in a silent but powerful show of force. In a private meeting room beneath the icy tundra of Antarctica, the leaders of Earth's united military forces gathered. The hum of quantum computers filled the air as General Alicia Rivers, one of Earth's top strategists, stood before a glowing projection of the galaxy. "We knew this day would come," she said, her voice steady but resolute. "The Galactic Council will not back down. They will send everything they have against us, but we've got the upper hand now. It's time to show them that humanity is not a species to be underestimated." Gray, who had been in constant communication with the military leaders, knew the Council would retaliate. But he also knew that humanity had one thing the Council didn't: adaptability. Over the centuries, humans had been forced to evolve, to fight for survival, and now they would use every ounce of that ingenuity to win this war. As the Council's fleets assembled, ready to strike, Earth's response was already in motion. Thousands of human ships, hidden from the Council's sensors, began to move into position. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin, and the stakes could not have been higher. But one thing was certain: Earth would not go down without a fight. The age of humanity's silence was over. The age of rebellion had begun. And soon, the Galactic Council would learn the true cost of underestimating mankind: the silent revolution. Across the galaxy, the tension was palpable. The Galactic Council, long accustomed to its unchallenged dominance, found itself facing an adversary it had underestimated for centuries. As the Council's war fleets gathered in the dark reaches of space, their commanders poised to strike at Earth, they still did not fully understand the scale of the threat they were up against. They believed their superior technology, vast fleets, and ancient knowledge would crush the humans once and for all. But they had never accounted for the power of human resilience and innovation. On Earth, the atmosphere was one of focused determination. Commander Lucas Gray, now at the helm of humanity's united military forces, had seen the rising storm. The time for diplomacy was over. The time for action had arrived. What had once been a fractured species, divided by political ideologies and resources, had now become a single unified force. Every nation on Earth, every individual with a skill to contribute, was working toward one singular goal: to show the galaxy that humanity would not be cowed by ancient powers. In the heart of Earth's most secure military facility, deep beneath the Arctic Circle, General Alicia Rivers and her team of strategists were finalizing the blueprint for humanity's first major counterstrike. A holographic map of the galaxy hovered before them, showcasing key Council strongholds and potential points of attack. Their intelligence, gathered through years of covert missions, had revealed critical weaknesses in the Council's defense systems. "We've spent too long hiding in the shadows," General Rivers said, her voice calm but steely. "The Council thinks we're still too young, too naive to understand the true scale of warfare. They've made their mistake by underestimating us. Now we make them pay for it. Commander Janice Miller, who had spearheaded the development of Obsidian Veil, stood beside the map, her eyes fixed on the display. "We've got the element of surprise," she added. "The Obsidian Veil system is ready to go. Our ships are already positioned in the deep sectors, undetected. With this tech, they won't even know we're coming." The room fell silent for a moment as everyone absorbed the enormity of their plan. They had achieved the impossible. Human ships, cloaked and undetectable, were scattered across the galaxy, poised to strike key council positions at a moment's notice. No longer would they be relegated to the role of passive observer. No longer would they be ignored. Far from Earth, the Council's warships began to assemble. Massive, menacing vessels, some as large as moons, their surfaces covered in sleek, metallic armor, drifted silently toward the human colonies, ready to bring the weight of the Council's wrath upon them. The Council believed that the humans would fold under the pressure, that their newfound strength was merely a fleeting spark, but they were about to be proven wrong. On the edge of Council space, hidden from view, Earth's fleet began to mobilize. Thousands of human ships, each one equipped with the Obsidian Veil technology, emerged from their cloaks and silently moved into formation. The ships, sleek and designed for speed, carried human crews that had been trained for years to carry out this mission. They were ready for war, but they weren't going to fight the same war the Council was accustomed to. This was going to be a new kind of conflict, one where human ingenuity and adaptability would be their greatest weapons. Commander Gray stood on the bridge of the flagship, Endurance, looking out into the vastness of space. The stars stretched endlessly before him, and for the first time, he could see the true scale of what they were about to do. "This is our moment," he said quietly, his voice carrying a mix of resolve and anticipation. "We fight not just for Earth, but for every species the Council has oppressed. They've written our history for too long. Now we'll write our own future." The crew around him, a mix of military veterans and young volunteers, nodded in agreement. Every person aboard Endurance knew what was at stake. They were not just fighting to survive. They were fighting for a chance to redefine the galaxy's future. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Council's capital, Elder Prime was deep in conversation with the military leaders of the various Council factions. His once unshakable confidence was now beginning to erode, replaced by a creeping sense of doubt. The intelligence reports he had received were troubling. Human activity had spiked in sectors previously thought to be unimportant. The yellow dots on the map, which had once been dismissed as inconsequential, were now everywhere. "Have you confirmed this?" Elder Prime asked one of his officers, his voice sharp with impatience. The officer, a being of crystalline form, bowed its head. "We have confirmed that the human ships are not following any established patterns. Our surveillance systems have failed to detect them until now. They are using technology we've never encountered before." The realization hit Elder Prime like a thunderclap. "They'd been hiding in plain sight," he muttered. "For years, they'd been preparing for this very moment." But it was too late. The Council had underestimated the ingenuity of a species that had once been dismissed as primitive. As the warships prepared for battle, they would discover, too late, that humanity's greatest strength was not in its firepower, but in its ability to think and adapt when the odds were stacked against it. Back on Earth, the countdown had begun. The first strike would come from the Outer Rim, where Earth's hidden fleet waited in silence, poised to strike against the Council's weakest link. In that moment, humanity's message would be clear. The days of being treated as subordinates were over. The revolution was silent, but it would echo throughout the galaxy for generations to come. As the human fleet moved into position, the engines of their ships hummed softly. No one would see them coming. And when the Council finally realized what had happened, it would be too late. The clash of empires. The silence of space was broken by the hum of engines and the steady pulse of anticipation that filled the bridge of the human flagship Endurance. Commander Lucas Gray stood at the center, His eyes locked onto the vast expanse of stars that stretched out before him. Around him, the crew moved with military precision, checking their stations, calibrating their equipment, and ensuring the readiness of every system. The time for hesitation was over. The moment had arrived. "We're entering the Council's outermost defense perimeter," the ship's tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Wong, announced. "All ships are in position, Commander. We're cloaked, and the Council can't detect us yet." Gray's face, worn with years of leadership and countless battles, was resolute. His mission was not just one of survival, it was to change the future of the galaxy. The Council had thought humanity to be an insignificant player in the grand scheme of things, but now it was time to show them the true power of human resilience. "Activate the Obsidian Veil and proceed as planned," Gray said, his voice steady but filled with a quiet urgency. As the Obsidian Veil technology activated, the ship's sleek form seemed to vanish into the darkness, becoming almost invisible to all sensors. In that moment, Endurance and the fleet of human ships scattered across the galaxy were nothing more than whispers in the void. It was the perfect time for the first strike. Beyond the edge of Council space, the Council warships were already moving into position, their massive engines humming with energy as they advanced toward Earth. They were unaware of the trap that lay in wait. What they didn't know was that the humans had already learned their tactics, their weaknesses, and their strategic patterns. For centuries, the Council had controlled the galaxy through sheer force, never once considering that someone might rise against them, someone who could challenge their supremacy. But now, humanity had found their opening. The first human ships to strike were led by Captain Elena Reyes, a seasoned veteran of Earth's Navy who had witnessed the suffering and restrictions imposed by the Council. Her mission was simple: to cripple the Council's military infrastructure and send a clear message that Earth was not to be ignored any longer. "Rise to fleet," Elena's voice crackled over the comms, sharp and commanding. "Initiate the attack sequence. Target their shipyards and military stations. Do not engage in direct combat unless absolutely necessary. We strike fast, and we strike hard." One by one, human ships emerged from the shadows of space, cutting through the void like predators in the night. They were silent, their engines masked by the quantum cloaking of the Obsidian Veil. In the blink of an eye, they pounced on the Council's unprotected shipyards, launching precision strikes with advanced weaponry that the Council had never encountered. The sudden explosions of energy lit up the dark expanse, signaling the beginning of the human assault. On the Council's flagship, Elder Prime watched in growing horror as the reports flooded in. His crystal-clear holographic screen flashed with alerts, showing massive explosions rippling across his carefully protected shipyards. His hand trembled as he issued orders to his fleet, his voice edged with panic. "What's happening? Where did they come from?" Elder Prime demanded, his once confident demeanor now cracking under the weight of humanity's unexpected assault. A younger officer, a member of the Dracarian race with dark, reptilian features, stammered in response. We can't see them. Their ships are hidden. Our sensors can't detect them. They're using technology we've never encountered before." The realization hit Elder Prime like a sledgehammer. The humans had bypassed the Council's most sophisticated defenses. How had they achieved it? The Council had thought they were in complete control, with their monitoring systems watching every corner of the galaxy, but they had underestimated the ingenuity of humanity. The humans had learned, adapted, and evolved far beyond what the Council could have ever imagined. "Prepare the fleet for full-scale engagement," Elder Prime commanded, his voice cold and resolute once again. "The humans have shown their hand. Now we will show them the true power of the Council." But the Council's response came too late. The humans were already on the move, their fleets scattered and strategic. Each strike was a calculated move, aimed at crippling key infrastructure and sowing confusion among the Council's ranks. They weren't fighting a traditional war. They were playing a game of shadows, a game where every move counted and every second was a gamble. Back on Earth, The leaders of the human alliance watched with bated breath as the battle unfolded. General Alicia Rivers stood in a secure command center, surrounded by her most trusted officers. The holographic displays before them showed the status of the fleet, the progress of the strikes, and the growing chaos in Council space. "We've done it," General Rivers said, her voice filled with grim satisfaction. "The Council is in disarray. Their fleets are scattering, their communications are disrupted, and they can't find our ships. This is our chance." But Rivers knew that the battle had only just begun. The Council would retaliate, and when they did, it would be nothing short of a full-scale assault. The humans had only bought themselves a brief moment of advantage, and they would need to use it wisely. In the heart of the Council's War Council, the atmosphere was one of frantic urgency. Elder Prime and his officers were scrambling to respond to the humans' sudden strike. His plan had been to overwhelm Earth with sheer force, but now he was confronted with a new kind of warfare, one that relied not on brute strength, but on intelligence, adaptability, and speed. "They're using our weaknesses against us," Elder Prime muttered, his mind racing. How did they become so powerful? But it was too late for questions. The galaxy was changing, and the Council had failed to see it. Humanity was no longer a pawn in their game. They had become a force in their own right, and the Council would have to fight with everything they had to try and hold on to their crumbling empire. The war between the two powers had begun, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. As Earth's ships continued to strike, slipping in and out of the shadows of space, the Galactic Council's grip on the galaxy began to slip. But this was only the beginning. The real battle, the battle for the future, was just getting started. The turning point. The first wave of human strikes had caused a ripple of chaos across the Galactic Council's forces. Their pride had been shattered, their impenetrable defenses exposed as vulnerable. Yet, in the midst of the confusion, Elder Prime remained steadfast. The Council had dealt with rebellions before, and they had crushed every challenge that came their way. This time, however, something was different. The humans were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their place in the galaxy. Far from the Council's military command center, in the distant reaches of space, the human fleet continued to strike with deadly precision. Ships emerged from the shadows of asteroids and distant moons, undetected by the Council's once pristine surveillance systems. The obsidian veil technology that had given them the element of surprise was working flawlessly. But even as their success seemed to reach its peak, the humans knew they were not invincible. Commander Lucas Gray, standing on the bridge of endurance, watched the stars outside as the battle unfolded. His face, stoic as ever, betrayed a deep sense of understanding. They had made their mark, but the war was far from won. The Council's retaliatory forces were already mobilizing, and the full might of their military machine was about to descend on Earth. "We've caused them damage, but they're not backing down," Gray said, his voice low but resolute. "Prepare for their counterattack. We'll need more than just stealth to win this fight." As the Endurance moved deeper into Council space, Gray's mind raced. The early victories had been critical in establishing humanity's presence in the galaxy, but the real test was yet to come. The Council, though shaken, was not weak. They had a long history of military dominance, and their ships were formidable, far more advanced than anything humanity had ever faced. But humanity had a secret weapon, the collective will to survive. It was something the Council had never truly understood. For all their advanced technology and ancient wisdom, they had never faced a species that could adapt as quickly as humanity. In the heart of Earth's military command center, General Alicia Rivers was already strategizing their next move. The early strikes had disabled several key Council supply lines, but their fleets were now coming in full force. A massive, coordinated counteroffensive was expected within the next few hours. But Alicia wasn't afraid. She knew that the humans could turn the tide with the right plan. "We've got them on the back foot," Rivers said, tapping a glowing holographic display showing the positions of both fleets. "Their ships are larger and more powerful, but they're not as fast or maneuverable as ours. If we can outsmart them, we'll have a fighting chance." Captain Elena Reyes, who had led the first wave of strikes, nodded in agreement. "They're used to fighting wars with overwhelming force, not with precision. We'll need to keep them off balance. Strike hard, hit their weak points, and don't give them a chance to regroup." "Exactly," General Rivers said. "We've already broken their hold on key sectors. Now we'll create chaos in their command structure. If we can disrupt their communications, we can prevent their fleets from coordinating. We'll keep them guessing, keep them off balance. But we'll need to move fast." The plans were set. As the countdown to the next phase of their strategy began, a wave of nervous energy swept through Earth's military personnel. No one knew what the Council's next move would be, but everyone understood the stakes. This was a fight not just for Earth, but for the future of all younger species in the galaxy. The humans had already proved that they were no longer the weak, isolated species the Council had once considered them to be. They were a force to be reckoned with. On the Council's flagship, Elder Prime stood in front of a massive holographic map, watching as the reports of the human attacks continued to flood in. His once calm demeanor was now edged with frustration. The humans had struck faster and harder than he had anticipated. His military forces were reeling, and the galaxy was beginning to look far less certain than it had a few short days ago. "What have we missed?" Elder Prime demanded, his voice tinged with disbelief. One of his officers, a being of dark, ethereal energy, looked up from the data streams. "They've evolved faster than we anticipated. Their ships are equipped with technology we've never seen before. It's like they're operating on a different level entirely. They don't fight the same way we do. They've been unpredictable, using unconventional tactics to undermine our fleet." The officer paused, looking at the map. "It's possible that they've already planned for a long-term campaign. If we don't stabilize our forces soon, we could be fighting them on multiple fronts." Elder Prime's eyes narrowed. "The humans believe they've won because they've made us doubt our superiority. But they are not invincible. We will reassert control." He turned to his war council, his voice now a cold, calculated command. "Prepare the full fleet. We will meet them head-on. If they wish to see the strength of the Council, we will show them." As the Council rallied its forces for a counteroffensive, the stage was set for an epic confrontation. The battle would not be won with brute force alone. It would be decided by who could outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast the other. For humanity, the fight was not just about winning. It was about survival, about proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, a determined species could change the course of history. Back aboard Endurance, Commander Gray stood resolute, the weight of the galaxy pressing upon him. "This is only the beginning," he muttered to himself, his eyes fixed on the shimmering horizon of space. "We've made our mark. Now, we finish what we started." The war for the galaxy had entered its most critical phase. Both sides were poised for the ultimate clash, where the fate of the galaxy would be determined not by strength, but by strategy, courage, and the will to never surrender. The humans had begun their revolution, and they were about to face their greatest test yet, the edge of extinction. The galaxy trembled. The war between the Galactic Council and humanity had escalated to a fever pitch, and both sides were now fully committed to victory or annihilation. No longer were the humans a mere nuisance to the Council. They had become an existential threat. As the humans continued to outwit, outmaneuver, and strike with brutal efficiency, Elder Prime could no longer ignore the reality. The Council was losing control. Commander Lucas Gray stood at the helm of Endurance, the flagship of humanity's forces, staring out at the vast expanse of space before him. The stars seemed distant now, a reminder of everything at stake. Every decision, every battle, could tilt the balance toward survival or extinction. "Report, Lieutenant Wong," Gray said, his voice steady despite the weight pressing on his shoulders. "We've infiltrated another Council stronghold," Wong replied, her voice calm, but with a hint of weariness. Their military command is scattered. We've hit their communications relay, and their fleets are having trouble coordinating. Their once efficient war machine is beginning to break apart. Gray nodded. They had won several key victories in the past few days, and the Council was losing its grip. But as much as they had disrupted the enemy's operations, the real threat was the retaliation that was coming. The Council had deep reserves, ancient fleets hidden in the farthest reaches of space. Humanity's advantage was that they were unpredictable, fast, and relentless. But the Council's advantage lay in sheer numbers, firepower, and centuries of military experience. Now it was time for both sides to bring everything they had to the table. Keep the pressure on them, Gray commanded. We can't let up. They'll regroup, and when they do, they'll strike back harder than ever. Meanwhile, on the Council's flagship, Elder Prime convened a war council unlike any before. His face, once calm and measured, was now a mask of fury. The human resistance was not only surviving, it was thriving. For the first time in his life, Elder Prime felt a creeping sensation of doubt. How could they have miscalculated so terribly? They've broken through our outer defenses, Elder Prime said, his voice low, filled with tension. Our fleets are in disarray. The humans have found ways to disable our most advanced technologies. How did they learn so fast? A tall, ethereal figure, one of the Council's highest military strategists, responded, his voice like a cold breeze. The humans have adapted to our tactics. They've been learning from our every move, every battle. They're using methods that we never considered: strategic warfare, misinformation, diversion. They think like we do, but they move faster. Elder Prime's jaw clenched. We cannot allow them to continue this. If they think they can challenge the entire Galactic Council, they are gravely mistaken. We will crush them, once and for all. But as Elder Prime spoke, deep within the Council's secret war chambers, something unexpected was happening. The Council's most ancient and trusted military fleet was already on the move. This fleet, though shrouded in secrecy, had the firepower to obliterate entire planets, let alone a fleet of human ships. It was the Council's last line of defense, its trump card, a force that had been hidden for centuries in the unknown sectors of the galaxy, and now it was being deployed. Meanwhile, the human fleet, still scattered in their small, agile ships, had begun to regroup at a fortified staging area hidden on a barren moon in a distant system. General Alicia Rivers, ever the strategist, was already preparing for the next phase of the war. They had been riding high on their success, but the Council's final fleet was coming. The humans had no illusions about what that meant. This was the tipping point. We're not going to be able to outrun this one, Rivers said, turning to her top commanders. That fleet they've just unleashed, if it catches us unprepared, it'll end the fight in one fell swoop. We need a new strategy. We have one advantage. They don't know where we are yet, and we have time. Let's use it wisely. Her team gathered around the war table, each member bringing their unique expertise to the discussion. The best minds of Earth were focused on one goal: how to survive the inevitable onslaught of the Council's final fleet. Their strategy was simple, but incredibly risky: lure the Council's fleet into an ambush. We'll have to be quick, said Captain Elena Reyes. We know the Council's fleet is fast, but it's not as maneuverable as ours. We can't fight them head-on, but if we can lead them into a sector with gravitational anomalies, we might be able to trap them. Agreed, said Janice Miller, the engineer responsible for Obsidian Vale. We can manipulate the system's energy signatures, create false readings, and draw them into the trap. The key is to keep our ships hidden as long as possible. Once they're in position, we hit them with everything we've got. It was a risky move, but it was their only chance. The stakes could not have been higher. If the Council's final fleet found them before they were ready, it would mean the end for humanity's struggle. Back in Council space, the elder leaders watched in grim silence as their fleet moved forward. But the signs of human activity were everywhere. The sudden disappearance of human ships, the misdirection, and the increased frequency of small-scale attacks. It all pointed to one thing: the humans had set a trap. Elder Prime's mind raced. "They think they can trick us," he muttered. "They are underestimating our power. We will not be so easily deceived." But as the Council's fleet closed in, the trap was set. Humanity had come to a point where the outcome of this conflict would determine not only their future but the future of the galaxy. For the first time, it wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about surviving a war of attrition, a war of minds, and a war where every mistake could mean the end of everything. The countdown had begun. The stage was set for the final, decisive battle of the war, one where humanity's ingenuity and courage would be put to the ultimate test. Would they triumph over the ancient might of the Galactic Council, or would this be the moment where the flames of their revolution were extinguished forever? The galaxy held its breath.